We are breaking into programming here on Al Jazeera because in the last few minutes, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe now says he's asked the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, for a one-year postponement of the Tokyo Olympics. And he says that these Summer Games will be held by summer 2021 at the latest. He says that he has been in touch with the IOC, with the senior management there, and has confirmed with them that the Tokyo Olympics will not be cancelled, but will only be postponed for 1 year. Now, this is going to be allegedly a complete Olympics. That includes both the Summer Games and the Paralympics. And Abe is couching this as proof of victory over coronavirus. So essentially, when they are held, eventually in 2021, it will be a celebration of a victory over the virus as well. Well, you're watching very, very recent pictures that we've just gotten in of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe from Japan speaking about the decision after a huge amount of international pressure has been building over the last weeks and days to eventually postpone the Tokyo 2020 Games. They will now, at the very latest, be held in summer 2021. Well, let's now go to our sports correspondent, Lee Wellings, who joins us live. He's been covering this from the beginning. Well, Lee, this is clearly no real surprise, given what we've been seeing over the last 24 hours. I mean, this mounting international pressure. But why this decision specifically now? Could they just not hold out any longer?
This is, of course, exactly the news we were expecting. And there is, of course, no choice. It's just a case of when it was going to come. And now we are there at the point where this extraordinary decision has had to be made in these extraordinary, difficult, unprecedented times. The only times Olympic Games have not taken place when scheduled before are during times of war. And of course, at times this coronavirus crisis has been compared to a war. It's affecting all corners of the globe. And there was mounting pressure, of course, on the International Olympic Committee to let everyone know where they stand. Now, this is not easy for Japan, for Tokyo, for Shinzo Abe, for everyone at the IOC, because they had to consider things like the legal situation. They couldn't just disregard that. They had to think about the logistics of how this might happen, where they stood with insurance, with athletes, with stakeholders, with broadcasters. They cannot just make these decisions and let everyone else follow on. They need to speak to people about it. But the two key players, of course, are the Tokyo organisers and the IOC. And I've been saying that I knew they were speaking today, that I expected the decision to come well within the 4-week deadline the IOC gave themselves, because this is the big one. Sport all over the world has stopped. There's no sport or hardly any at all being played. Everyone was looking to the Olympics and saying, let's just get the news out there, and then more detail can come in due course.
Sure. Lee, are we seeing this now because of the pressure that we saw over this last week? I mean, Canada and Australia both saying that they wouldn't be sending athletes to the Games. Is that what pushed it over the line?
Yeah, that really has actually helped the scenario rather than hindered. When people saw Canada and Australia and Poland and Germany and others saying, look, we really urge you to call these off, that actually was welcomed by the IOC. It actually helps their position legally in terms of how it's phrased, and actually led them into a position where they knew that their time was running out to make this decision, that athletes who have really sort of suffered with this, as everybody, had to know where they stand. They were in a position where even training it was becoming dangerous. So, yeah, we were in this position where it had to be taken by the IOC. And actually, if you then look a year ahead and the likelihood that the Olympics and Paralympics will be together in the summer of 2021, so in the same kind of position that it was before, people will then say, well, what about the knock-on effect on other sports and events? How does that work? Something like the World Athletics Championships in Oregon takes place in August of 2021. Well, you could also then quickly say, it really doesn't matter, does it? People are having to fight coronavirus everywhere. Surely a sports event that's much smaller than the Olympics can be rescheduled. It could even take place in the run-up to the Olympics. They will make it work. And then actually we can start talking about a celebration, as the Japanese Prime Minister has put it. And hopefully, of course, and you'd expect the world to be a far different place in 2021 than it is at the moment.
Lee, I mean, as we are saying, it will be a very different place. How is this all going to play out for athletes? I imagine athletes who've been training their whole lives for this moment, how will they be taking this news? Would there be decisions that are split about whether or not they want to participate?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you'd be able to find hardly any athletes that say, look, we want this to go ahead in July, because it would be futile. There's no way it could go ahead in July. And in fact, it's a push to say that it could happen later this year, which was explored and has been looked at by particularly the Japanese organisers of this Olympics. But actually, athletes, it's a job. People sometimes forget that. Now, think in that job, there's a 4-year cycle, and peaking and training at the right time, it's all extremely important to them that they go through the right practice events, the right qualifying events, and then you get to the time to compete. Now, all of this changes, and all of this has to be adapted. But again, everything is usurped by the coronavirus crisis, because you'd say, OK, you have to change, you have to adapt, you have to possibly, in some cases, get new funding, you have to go through new qualification procedures. All of these things are relatively small compared to health and safety. And I think that was one of the growing things here. This Olympics being postponed, it's not just a mere sports matter. This is a mega event that was getting to the point where people were getting very anxious about their health and safety. So the absolute first thing to do is say it's off, postponed, and then people can start putting the very, very complicated procedures in place for next year. Of course, we'll know far more about where we stand with each passing day, let alone in 2 or 3 months, or when the Olympics was due to take place this year. By then, we'll know far better how we stand for next year.